Hello, everyone. Welcome back to youHQ Wellbeing Wins. I am here with the wonderful Kerry Munson, registered nutritional therapist. Kerry, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Great. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. The first Wellbeing Wins of 2025. And look, I do say this every time, but this is a biggie because we know that diet and nutrition is so big and so varied and unique to the individual. But we're really excited to get in touch, and we've had so much interest from people on email and LinkedIn and jumping in and saying, "I'm really looking forward to listening to this one." So thank
Oh,
you so much for
fabulous.
joining us. Could
Brilliant.
you just tell us a little bit more about you, your background, your passion for diet, and what's led you to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think a lot of nutritional therapists have the same kind of backstory. We all got into nutritional therapy because of our own health issues. So for me, I think teenage years, I started to get little symptoms coming in, little things I didn't really, know what was happening, didn't really talk about them. They built up a bit when I went to university and started cooking for myself. And, I now know, obviously, when you go to university, often people's health starts to go downhill at that point because they're not eating very well. Fast forward a bit to my first job, I was in hedge funds in London, living kind of the fast life and not eating very well again. And my health went really, really downhill, and to the point I was having to go to the doctors. I was fatigued, brain fog, digestive issues, hormone issues. I mean, you name it, skin issues. It was just a lot, everything, top to toe. I was only 25. And everything was normal. All my bloods were normal. Everything was fine, apparently. And yet I felt absolutely dreadful and started to get really miserable because I just couldn't understand what was happening to me or even what I could do about it. And I think the epiphany, the defining moment for me was when I went to the doctors and I burst into tears and I just went, I can't carry on like this. This is awful. It's affecting my job. It's affecting my relationships, my enjoyment of life. And he said, oh, okay, well, how about we try antidepressants? And I was just like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm miserable because of how I feel, but I'm not depressed. So it propelled me to try and figure it out. And I found an amazing book on diet and hormones. I was really lucky, found just the right book at the right time. And I read it and I did everything it said religiously. And within a few weeks, it started to turn everything around. And it was just a total light bulb moment of, oh, right, okay, what I eat actually helps me to feel better, or what I eat actually makes me feel worse. And it was so amazing and inspiring that I just thought, right, people need to know about this. I need to do this. This is it. This is my career. This is it. And so I found an amazing course that was in London, part-time, did 3 years side by side with my job in hedge funds, training in the evening at the weekends, and yeah, qualified as a nutritional therapist. And that was about 20 years ago now. So since then, I've been working with people all ages, boys, girls, men, women, anyone who's motivated by wanting to make their health better, and they're the ones that understand that what they're eating is affecting how they feel. And then, so I've just got this absolute passion for trying to explain to people just how important it is, the food that we eat, and making that connection with how we're feeling. And then specifically, the teenage thing came in a few years ago when I was working at an amazing fatigue clinic in London. And I suddenly started to notice that there were more teenagers coming through. It was kind of post-pandemic, more teenagers coming through with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, bedbound, just awful, in a terrible state. But the same thing, 20 years on, same thing, their parents would talk to me and say, oh, the doctor said there's nothing they can do. There's no hope. They've just got to learn to live with it. And it's just awful to hear that, that this amazing person in front of you with their whole lives ahead of them, have got no hope and no idea what to do. And then I start working with them, and a month later they come back to the next session and they're like, yeah, I've got more energy. And then next session their anxiety's gone, and the next session they're not depressed anymore, and the next session they're applying to university, and the next session they're going backpacking. You just suddenly go. And the defining moment was one of the parents said to me, why didn't anybody tell me this? And I was like, you're right. nobody told me this when I was young. Nobody told you this now. Nobody's telling anybody. So when you go to the doctors, they don't have time to say, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you exercising? Are you doing all good things? They just say, well, your bloods are fine, so we don't know what to do. And so this is where I'm at right now. This is this kind of second epiphany, second light bulb moment of, we just have to get out there and explain to parents, teachers, schools, the kids themselves, how you feel is dependent, like absolutely massively, on what you are eating. So yeah, here I am.
Thank you so much. And your passion obviously just comes flooding out. And also I find it really interesting, like me, you had, I like the word you used, epiphany. I call mine a midlife crisis, where I just went, I can't be a teacher anymore. But yours is much more positive, where I love that. And also, it's really powerful when it's affecting you. Like, you're just really personally affecting you, and you've done, you've done something. You've got action. You're doing something about this, and you want to make a change. And that's really brilliant to hear. Part of your mission statement, I guess, is, like you said, is empowering teens to be happier and healthier. Can you just tell us a little bit about the work that you've started doing? And also, I'm quite interested to know, when you say teens, do you specifically work with a certain age group? Is there a specific area or age or category of young people that you're working with? And if you are, is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so there isn't a specific age. I am open to working with anybody who is motivated to improve their health through their diet and their lifestyle. I have a special interest in teenagers, because I believe that, a lot of teenagers are really struggling right now, and we've got rocketing rates of mental health disorders and ADHD and autism, and teenagers are struggling. I generally don't do children so much, and that, I think, is because you need to be quite specialist to know about just pediatric vitamins and minerals. But that's not to say that I don't work with children. If someone is motivated and a parent is happy to take the lead, then I am happy to work with anybody that wants to change. That's the key thing. There's no point dragging a teenager to come and see me if they're not interested in making any changes. It's the motivation to do the work has got to be there.
And I think this is why diet is so interesting and tricky, because there's lots of information, lots of it, the information is conflicting for some parents, isn't it, as well? And also, when you're talking about your children or the teens, or for me as a dad, it's one thing me knowing what they should be eating and wanting them to eat, and it's another thing getting them to eat, and that's the tricky bit. And we're not going to have time to get into all the psychology behind what we eat and how we fall off the wagon and all that sort of stuff. But is that something that you find, is that psychological piece really interesting? Is that something that you talk to parents about? And some of the, and we'll get into what parents can take away from this when they're watching, but is that part of what drives you as well?
So, well, I did psychology at uni, so that's where my kind of my training started. I didn't continue in that field, but I have got an absolute passion for psychology, how the brain works, behavior, what forms our behaviors. So that is I weave that through the way I work. It's all coaching. There's very much everything I do with people. It's very much a two-way process, and I think that's when it works. It doesn't work when you sit there and you say, right, you need to eat more green leafy vegetables, because even I would turn around and go, no. So you've got to say, how do you feel about it? And would you like to try it? And do you think you could just try a tiny bit? And what I often find is that where parents are banging their head up against a brick wall, a teenager will be more receptive to hearing it from me, and will be more willing to give it a go, because I've said it and I'm not their parent. So sometimes I get, and I've got 3 teenagers myself, and I look at what they're eating sometimes, and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, and then it's because they're my teenagers, and that they're just designed to rebel against their parent and what their parent wants. So I think it can be tricky, but there are ways of I think what I have found with teenagers is they're very receptive to knowledge and to the science and to the facts. And when you explain it, and when you say, look, this is how your neurotransmitters work, you're sitting there right now and you're telling me that you're feeling really anxious. I can tell you that this is what neurotransmitters require. These are the building blocks of neurotransmitters. These are the foods that supply those cofactors, those nutrients. we can see in your diet that you're not eating them. So what are you going to do about it? Do you want to carry on feeling anxious, or do you want to make some little changes that might make you feel a little bit better? And, you know, most teenagers are going to turn around and say, I want to feel a bit better, and I'll give it a go. But it's very much, you know, working on their where they're at that moment in time, and what they're willing to try, and what their hang-ups are around food. And it's very much a kind of individual process to make that person feel like they've got a plan that works for them, that isn't just being told what to do.
I love what you said about the education piece. I just think that's so important. Obviously, that's exactly what we do at youHQ. We want the platform and the work that we do. We want to empower. And I know that's a big, that, you know, that's part of what you've said in your tagline. It's not making them eat good food. It's empowering them so they intrinsically want to eat good food that's going to benefit their bodies and their brains, and that's so important, isn't it? I love that piece. And also the other bit I think is really important that we're very hot on, and I'm feeling at the moment, is it's the small incremental changes. You don't have to change your whole diet. You don't have to quit all dairy. You don't have to, you don't have to stop eating bacon. You know, I always say that's always my one. I couldn't stop eating bacon or eggs. I just love it. That's really interesting. And we're going to get into some of that science as well. So bear with us. I also have a confession to make to you. I was planning, so I do quite a lot of the cooking now because of the way I'm working from home, and my wife works at special needs school and she works really, really hard. And I really want it to be convenient. You know, I'm that guy. I want to put it in the slow cooker or the air fryer or whatever. But I had this great plan. I was going to do my lasagna. You know, I think it's pretty good. I was going to fairly well balanced, and I was going to go, And do you know what? I did the classic. I waited too long. I didn't get it ready, and it was fish fingers, chips and peas, and I feel really guilty. I felt like I had to get off my chest to tell you that I did the classic fish fingers. So that's what we did.
Healthy plate as a resource, haven't we? Later, and you know, and you're not so bad. That you've got your protein, you've got your carbs, and you've got your vegetables. So you know, it's not so bad.
Thank you, Kerry. I feel better now.
Peas are
and on the and just on the resources, we are going to reference some, and you know, there might be some slides that pop up, but Kerry's got some wonderful resources. And whether you're watching live now or you jump on later, if you go to the youHQ website and you go to the Wellbeing Wins area, you can just put your basic info in, and then we will send across those resources that Kerry's really kindly shared with us. So I'd like to get into this concept of the food for well-being, brain function side. Can you start us off with that? And the bit that I find really difficult, and I am a sports scientist with a real interest in this, I still can't get my head around the gut microbiome bit. I really find that I want to know why that's important, and I'd love to hear where we could start with that.
All right. So the microbiome, then, just for people that don't know, the digestive system is home to, I think it's over 100 trillion microorganisms. So tiny little organisms that include bacteria, yeast, fungus. Even viruses, they're all there in our gut, and they're not just in the gut, they're all over us. So we've got a skin microbiome as well. We are covered literally in these microorganisms, but specifically the gut microbiome. It's whenever we eat our food, the food that goes down into our stomach and is digested, it's then put into the small intestine, and then it starts to be processed. And then once it goes into the large intestine, that's where these bacteria mainly live. And they take the food that we've eaten and they process it. And they particularly love plant foods, so fiber, but soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. And they digest it, and they make all these amazing chemicals as a result of breaking down this food. And those chemicals go into our own system. Now they can go into the bloodstream, and they can then go up to the brain. So the brain has got this, the brain and the gut has got this two-way bidirectional mechanism, and it's linked by the nervous system, so the vagus nerve. And it's become quite topical, the vagus nerve, recently. So it goes down from the brain, so the brain talks to the gut and the gut talks to the brain. So the chemicals that the microbiome are producing are interacting with our nervous system and sending messages up to the brain based on what those chemicals are. They're also interacting with the immune system. So I think I'll get my numbers right. 60 to 70% of the immune system actually lives in the gut. So whenever you're thinking, oh, my immunity is a bit low, I keep getting all these viruses, think gut. What's my digestion doing? How good is my digestion at the moment? Because the microbiome, how well you look after that microbiome, it's now being linked to all kinds of diseases, conditions. It's being linked if you have an imbalance in the bacteria. So there are lots of, I think there's over 100 different populations of bacteria in your gut. And I think of them as different families. So you've got lots and lots of different families living in a village. And we want those bacteria populations to be in harmony. We want them to none to be so overgrown and overpopulated that they've become unruly and they're producing too many chemicals that are causing inflammation or causing your gut to get leaky. And so what we're feeding them is feeding those populations. We need a nice variety of the food that we're eating to feed all of the populations and keep them in balance. When they're in balance, we don't get health problems. When they're out of balance and you're driving inflammation because of your microbiome, it's now being linked to anxiety, depression. Alzheimer's is being studied now as being caused by the gut. So this two-way process very much is something to be really watchful of, how good the digestion is. So when I start my work with people, we really, really zoom in on the digestive system because it really is the second brain. And if your gut is not working properly, you will almost certainly be having brain problems as well, or mental health problems. So it's absolutely, and I think I read a stat which said something like there's 30 studies on the microbiome being published every single day at the moment. So it's a kind of exploding part of the research. And I think, in the years to come, we'll be finding out a lot more about just how much impact the bacteria in our gut are having on our overall health. But we can do so much to interact with them and make them be healthy rather than unhealthy. So that's a lot of behind a lot of the work that I do.
Thank you for explaining that, because I've heard the term so much, and then I don't know why, but I've never quite fully understand it. But that concept that what you said, it's almost a second brain, and the way they talk to each other and they work together. And you're so right. If there's more and more research on it, obviously it's having a huge impact. It obviously did for you, like you were explaining at the start, how you were feeling all those things when you were working so hard. And where does this research fit in for our young people and school and that kind of stuff as well? Because obviously a lot of the work we do is around wellbeing and mental health, and the problems for that at the moment, the kids missing school, struggling with exam stress or any sort of stress at all. Where's that going, and can you tell us a bit about some of the work that you're doing in that area as well?
Well, for me, I've now got this passion about nutritional psychology. I think, and that is a kind of a new field. When I did psychology all those years ago, no one even talked about what does the brain actually need to function. So I now know, and there is research to prove it, that the brain needs at least 36 different micronutrients to function really well. So if those nutrients aren't there, so we're talking about things like vitamins, minerals, fats, proteins, amino acids, and also chemicals that come from plants, phytochemicals. And they've shown now that the brain needs those nutrients to function. So if we also know that teenagers are on average eating 66% of their diet, 2/3 of their diet is junk food, is ultra high processed food. Now, so then we do the leap. Well, ultra high processed food, pretty much devoid of those 36 nutrients that the brain needs to function. So then it's not really much more of a leap to be able to say, well, actually, so what we're saying is that we've got a brain that needs all these nutrients to function. We're not giving it any of those nutrients because these foods contain zero of any of those. So the brain is malfunctioning. So the symptoms that we're seeing, the lack of focus, the anxiety, the low mood, the irritability, the aggression, the behavior issues, oppositional defiance, ADHD, dopamine dysregulation, they're all coming from brains that don't have the fuel that it needs to function properly. And I use the analogy of like a car. We all know that a car, if you don't fill the tank up, you can't get in it and expect to go anywhere. If you put petrol in a diesel car and turn the engine on, you will probably damage the engine. And we're doing that when we eat the foods that aren't filling up those 6, if you think about it as 36 little fuel tanks in our body, we need to be filling those 36 little tanks up regularly, every day if possible. If we're not, and we're eating 2/3 of our diet as food that doesn't have any of those in, these tanks are just going down, 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 down. And then we expect the brain to work. We expect to be able to sit in a classroom and concentrate, but we haven't got the nutrients that make the brain concentrate. We sit and we want a child to be engaged and sociable, but we're not giving it the nutrients to give it make the neurotransmitters that make them sociable. So this is where I'm working, which is just trying to make the link between these little fuel tanks that need filling up. And if you're not eating the food, then you will struggle. You won't be able to perform well in your academics. You won't be able to, you will probably miss school. You won't be able to learn. Your memory won't work brilliantly because you're not putting the nutrients in the memory. And we can talk about in more detail about the specific nutrients that we need to have good memories. We're just not eating them nowadays. They're just, every client that comes through, I'm like, right, I can see it. I can see what we need to do here. You need to eat a little bit more of this or a little bit more of this, and get some of this in. We get some of this in, and sure enough, it's like for them it feels like a miracle. And for me, it's just logic. It's just, we need a brain that has these nutrients. If you give it this, it will perform. If you don't give it this, it won't perform. And so the symptoms that we're seeing are just brains that are malnourished, basically, because of the influx of processed food.
And with that, do you see, it's very difficult to say what one thing, but would it be processed foods, too much processed foods, if you were going to put your finger on the one thing, that's the key. Yeah. And that's probably, I imagine, what we do in our house as well, because it's convenient, and they slap something on it like low sugar, high protein, whatever it is, but it's still a processed food. And I'm already feeling ashamed, and we're not going to go there.
Oh no, it's definitely you know what, there is no judgment, because we are, we're being marketed to relentlessly, and the foods are being designed and tweaked and improved to basically be as palatable and amazing, to taste as amazing as they possibly can, and they're being designed to be addictive. So if processed food comes into, I'm not processed food free, who is? This isn't about being perfect by any stretch, but it's just about having that awareness and knowing what you're eating, and then also mitigating it by saying that we had that last night, but tomorrow we're going to pile on the vegetables and the oily fish. It's about balance. It's always about balance. We will always be needing convenience foods, but there is you can be more aware of the ones that you're choosing, but there is absolutely no judgment. Those marketing departments are going all out to market these products that are doing us. I mean, we know now, the data is there. These products are damaging our health. They are causing disease. They are affecting our mental health. They're triggering cancers. It's there. The data is there.
What do we class as? I mean, again, I feel sometimes I think I should know this, but processed food, is it something that is packaged up and something's added to it to keep its shelf life, basically? So it's just not fresh. It's just something that's packaged up in that way. How do we know?
Yeah, there are two types of processed food. So one lot of processed food is what we've been doing for centuries, which is just taking a food, so like wheat, and processing it, milling it, mixing it with other ingredients, and making bread. That's food processing. Picking vegetables out of a field and then canning them is a processed vegetable, or freezing it. That's processing. So that is processing in its purest form, and in a form that we have been doing for many, many, many years. So processed food like that is not the problem. The problem is ultra high processed food. So these are the foods that are they barely resemble food. So I always say to, when I'm trying to kind of bring it to life, it's have a think about what the food that your grandparents or your children, your great grandparents used to eat. If it's not something they used to eat, then probably it's ultra high processed. And so we're thinking like, I don't want to name brands or anything, but donuts and corn chips, and those, they don't look like food, or jelly sweets that all the kids eat. They don't look like food. They don't resemble any food at all. And they contain, if you turn the packet over and you see more than, say, 5 ingredients, that's a good rule of thumb that this is an ultra high processed food. If you can't pronounce many of those ingredients, again, not food. They're not what our grandparents used to eat. There's just all of these additives and chemicals and food colorings and flavorings and preservatives and gums and emulsifiers, and all of those are not foods. So our bodies have evolved over thousands of years. Our liver has evolved over thousands. Our microbiome has evolved, but this has happened too quickly. And so when we eat those foods, we're eating just like a ton of chemicals, and they're going into our digestive system. They're causing all manner of disruption to our microbiome. The microbiome doesn't know what to do with these chemicals. They're causing damage to our gut lining. They're making the gut leaky. So leaky gut, I don't know whether you've heard about that, but that is a real thing that I see a lot, and I deal with that a lot. Basically, the gut is supposed to be a sealed tube, and it's just supposed to allow nutrients to flow across it into the bloodstream. And those nutrients are the vitamins, minerals, proteins, all the things that keep us alive and healthy. When you get a damaged gut lining, that tube basically springs holes. And then stuff that's in the gut, which you can kind of think what's going through the gut, it's not that nice, starts leaking into the bloodstream. Now, that blood goes straight to the liver. And the liver processes and cleans the blood and tries to get all this gunk out. Now we're seeing rising rates of young people, much younger people with digestive cancers, rocketing rates of liver cancer, stomach cancer. And everyone's scratching their head going, oh, wow, where is this coming from? Well, I don't know whether the research shows it, proves it yet, but there's definitely a causal link there between putting all of these chemicals in that our digestive system just doesn't recognize, and our liver is having to, work so hard to process them to get them out, because it's saying it's a toxin, need to get rid of it. And then we're noticing this effect of increasing cancers in specifically those areas. I think we really need to be careful about what we're putting in. Because these foods are just so new, and we don't really know what we're doing when we're eating them.
It's leaky gut freaks me out.
Yeah.
but isn't it mad? Isn't it mad that we know the effects of tobacco and alcohol and all that kind of stuff, but actually with these, they're just it's socially accepted, isn't it? It's a socially accepted thing. We know we're busy. We know we need convenient stuff, and everyone's in that same boat. But this is where that education bit you said at the start is so important. And you don't want to scare people, don't you? You don't want to say, well, if you eat this, you're going to get cancer. But is there? Can we? I feel like we could talk about. And again, just to reiterate, if you want to get a little bit more insight, obviously we'll put all the details on where you can contact Kerry. And if you do register, then we will share more of the resources. That Kerry, not all of her resources, but some of the resources that she's got that might give you a bit more of an insight. And I've already feel like I've learned a lot already about about that gut brain axis and how they talk to each other. Can we go on to what, I don't like the word hacks, but are there simple things that you could say? I know every child and parent and everyone's different, and I guess that's kind of one of the tricky things with diet, that you might respond differently to a food that I would respond to. But is there some really kind of nice concepts and things that we can say to parents that say, look, we've already said one good one, haven't we? Where if it's ultra high processed, and I like that idea that if there's more than 5 ingredients and you can't pronounce some of them, then you're probably looking at something that's not very good for you. Is there any others that come up regularly that you can say, okay, well, look, this is one that always comes up?
It's kind of funny. It's not funny, but it's a theme that I've noticed just more and more and more. And so nearly always when I start with a client nowadays, I look at they always give me a 3-day food diary, included a weekend day and 2 weekdays. So I've got that 3 days of what they've just eaten in front of me. And I would say that probably 90% are carbohydrate focused. So I would say mostly when clients come to me, they're not eating ultra high processed food. That isn't that most people come to me and they're eating a relatively healthy diet, but it's very tipped towards carbohydrates. So we nearly always just swap that ratio around. And so we just get a little bit more protein in. So that's where I always start, focusing in on getting that protein in. And the reason being is that protein is just so important, but we need it it contains all the amino acids. So it's amino acids that our body is wanting. And those amino acids are needed for the neurotransmitters. We can't make our neurotransmitters without a steady supply of these amino acids.
And the amino acids, Kerry, are the breakdown of the protein, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we're talking about specifically tryptophan. That is one of the amino acids that you find in protein foods. Oh, there's a nice picture of the protein foods there. So you've got your meat, your fish, your eggs, cheese, dairy, and then vegetarian protein. So we've got nuts, seeds, lentils, chickpeas, and things. So tryptophan is the amino acid that is needed to make serotonin, and serotonin is our happy neurotransmitter. So if you have got anybody that you know that is a little bit anxious, low mood, probably need to get a little bit more protein in to get that tryptophan in to get more serotonin made. And the other one that's really key that I see a lot is missing a lot is specifically the tyrosine amino acid, and that's what we need to make our dopamine. So dopamine dysregulation is what we associate with ADHD, and that's what we're seeing a lot of now. So we need that steady supply of these amino acids to provide those neurotransmitters. So it can have a huge impact on how someone is feeling, their mood, their motivation, their focus. Protein also is really important for the blood sugar regulation. So if you start your day on a carbohydrate breakfast, and I think we'll come to breakfast in a little while, but start your day on a carbohydrate-based breakfast, which in this country is really common. We all reach for the cereal, the toast, the porridge. They're very carby breakfasts. You set yourself off on a blood sugar roller coaster because those breakfasts break down into glucose. Your glucose spikes, your insulin gets pumped out to bring your glucose down to a normal level, your blood sugar falls, and maybe 1 or 2 hours later you're hangry in many kids' cases. They're just feeling irritable.
We use that term a lot in our house. Hungry. Yeah.
And it's blood sugar. It's just a blood sugar dip, and it's because your body, your blood sugar drops too quickly, and when it goes below a certain level, your body needs to get more glucose back into the bloodstream. So it pumps out stress hormones, it pumps out adrenaline to get the glucose back out of the liver and get it back into the bloodstream, so it comes up to a normal level again. But that adrenaline makes you feel irritable, jittery, a bit angry. And that's all it is. So hangriness is a blood sugar issue, and protein stabilizes that. So that's one of I would say the most important thing where I start is just getting more protein, a steady supply with protein into each meal. So making sure there's some in breakfast, a really good chunk in breakfast, some in lunch, some in dinner, and then if you're going to have snacks in between, making sure that those snacks aren't carby as well. It's always about making sure there's a bit of protein in every single meal, and then that just keeps your blood sugar nice and stable. And blood sugar dysregulation, it's not just a short-term hangry thing. Blood sugar dysregulation leads to, in the long term, pre-diabetes, diabetes, weight gain, cardiovascular disease. Alzheimer's is now being considered type 3 diabetes, so sugar dysregulation that's affecting the brain. So it's important getting blood sugar stable and noticing moments like that and saying, okay, so we've got a hangry person here. What did you have to eat this morning? What did you have to eat 2 hours ago? Let's have a look, start tracking what they're eating, and then looking for the gaps. Did they not have any protein? Did they eat something high sugar? Have they gone on that up and down throughout the day. It fixes a lot. I bring that in often in the first session, and a few days later I'll get a little email going, oh my God, I can't believe it, I feel so much better. One of the teachers at the school that I was working with recently came running over to me at parents' evening and said, I've got to tell you, I've changed my breakfast since you did the talk, and I feel amazing. So it works. It really does change how you feel for the rest of the day. The other thing is that a lot of people and children are struggling with sleep issues, not being able to fall asleep, not being able to stay asleep, wakefulness in the middle of the night. Blood sugar can often trigger waking in the middle of the night because your blood sugar falls, and again you get this spurt of adrenaline to get your blood sugar back up to, and so you wake up feeling a bit stressed and you don't quite know why, and it's the middle of the night. It's possibly a blood sugar dysregulation, going a bit too low. So getting protein in your breakfast will also help you sleep better at the end of the day. So it's a really kind of important one. That's one of the first things I do. The second thing that is nearly always missing in people's diets nowadays, very few people are eating these, and that's omega-3 fats. So they are absolutely critical for the brain. Our brain is made of, I think, 60%, the solid matter of the brain is made of 60% fat. So it's really important. And the omega-3 fats particularly, so they're found in oily fish, seafood, like organic eggs often will have omega-3 in them, and seeds, nuts and seeds, so pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, that kind
Kerry,
of thing.
why only organic eggs? Why do they have to be organic eggs?
They just tend to have more omegas. So I think because of the way they're produced and the feed that the chickens are given. You're asking me now for my farming knowledge, but I think it's to do with the feed that they're given. They're given different they're given different grain. So the grain.
And interestingly, some of those omega-3 foods are also high protein foods as well, aren't they? Which is quite nice. So you can get that double whammy. Yeah. And can we double back to protein quickly? Because I don't want to talk too much about one thing, but I personally find that really interesting as a someone that trains a lot, and I like the gym, and I've got 2 big boys, and I've always been hot on protein. I even remember my wife saying, "You're giving them too much protein." My 12-year-old's bigger and stronger than me now, so I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, where do you stand on the supplement side of protein? So I imagine, obviously natural source is great, but as a former director of sport and sports coach, I'd always get boys of a certain age starting to ask me about protein shakes and supplements, and are they good, and that kind of stuff. And again, we do buy the little squeezy yogurt high protein things that are really popular now, and I imagine there's probably, if I read the label, going back to what we were saying, there's probably stuff in there that's not great. But I just wanted to ask, where do you stand on that, and do you have a really nice simple hack for breakfast? Because and we won't go there, but is cereal the biggest con of our generation? Like, we were told it was cheap and it was good for us, and now we're just still, and I'm the same. My boys, I don't have cereal anymore. I used to, but my boys are having cereal every morning, and so I'm definitely guilty of giving my boys, who are neurodiverse chaps who find things tricky, and I imagine we think we're giving them a fairly healthy porridge, and actually, it's still really carb heavy, isn't it?
It is carb heavy, and so porridge is definitely deemed to be a healthy breakfast, but you change it to a protein breakfast, and invariably people come back going, wow, it still breaks down into glucose. It's a little bit slower than cornflakes or Cocoa Pops, which are just a massive sugar hit instant. It does break down more slowly because of the fiber that's in there. And if you've got the milk in there as well, then that's got a bit of protein, but it's not the same as having an omelette for your breakfast or scrambled eggs. So I would definitely say, so specifically the supplements. So I'm a big fan of protein powders, and I'm not all nutritional therapists are, but I find that because I'm working with teenagers, and because I'm mostly working, well, it came out of the chronic fatigue clients that I was working with. They are exhausted. You cannot tell them to go and stand at a cooker and whip up an omelette every morning. They are absolutely exhausted. So you need quick. And a protein shake, it offers the nutrients that you need. It becomes a vessel that you can add lots of things in. So they're great for kids or teenagers or adults that have fussiness, that don't like certain things, because you can hide stuff. You can put a slug of flaxseed oil in there, and you can't taste it. So it's a great way of getting the nutrients in that we know the brain needs in an easy form that is quick. You can whiz it up, you can take it in the car, if you're in a hurry in the morning. I don't really advocate eating on the go, but sometimes you have to. I would much rather someone got in a car when they're in a hurry with a protein shake that they've just whizzed up. You can make the dry ingredients the night before, put them all together, and then all you've got to do is put the liquid in and whiz it in the morning.
Is it okay for kids, Kerry? Would you say
Yeah.
there's a cut-off that is okay? Because I think that's what a lot of people worry, don't they? They think actually, no, you can't. You're a child. You can't have a protein supplement. But actually, all we're talking about, like you say, is a breaking down of the protein into a different form, and then you have to be a bit careful with the type of protein supplement you buy. You have to check the labels on that.
Yeah, definitely check the label. So they've exploded on the market, and there are just so many to choose from. It's bewildering even for me. I find there's a sliding scale of the pure ones. So there are some that are very, very pure. So pea protein is one of my go-tos. So I tend to veer away from the whey powders. I go more for the vegan ones. So pea protein.
Is there a good reason for that, Kerry? Is there like a simple reason why they're maybe better?
A lot of clients can have problems with dairy, so the whey can sometimes just be a bit disruptive digestively, or can cause they can have a lot of sensitivities. Whereas the pea protein or the vegan proteins just seem to be a little easier. They're less. They don't cause as many issues, but they're possibly a little bit less palatable. So if you have a protein powder made out of pure pea protein, you may not be able to drink it. So then you've got to try pea protein combined with something else, and maybe some vanilla flavor, and then you might find that that's fine for you, but your child might have it and say, nah, not eating that. And then you need to kind of go to the next layer down and look for the protein powder that's had a little bit more put in, that makes it palatable, not going down so many are just full of horrible chemicals and you don't want to go near them. But there's a range in the middle, and for me that's the sweet spot, which is they're palatable, you enjoy them. That's the whole thing about food, is that you're supposed to enjoy it. It's a great thing in life that we can have all this amazing food and enjoy it. So it's about choosing the one that gives you the benefits, none of the negatives, but that you can actually enjoy it and eat it and look forward to having it. Back to the cereal, I would say, a lot of clients will say, well, I don't want to just drink my breakfast. And I'll say, fine, if you don't want to drink your breakfast, just make a half a protein shake and have it for breakfast, but have it alongside your cereal, because then you've got the protein that's balancing out the sugar in the cereal. And you've hopefully put some pumpkin seeds or some flax seeds into your protein shake. So you've got your fats going in there as well. And all of that will slow down the digestion, slow down the release of glucose, and give you a nice sustained energy and glucose level for the next 3 to 4 hours. And that's what you're aiming
for. Do the flax seeds / pumpkin seeds have the omega-3?
They do, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I've never gone there, but now that makes total sense as to why you have them. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got those lovely, EPA. The oily fish has EPA and DHA, which they're the ones that are good for the brain, and then the plants have, scientifically, but it's one layer up. So basically, the fish have converted the plant seeds into the ones that are helpful for the brain, but you have to do it yourself when you eat the pumpkin seeds. So they're not quite as beneficial as the fish oils, because you get the fully converted brain chemical when you eat fish oils or fish. But the pumpkin seeds and the flax seeds are just really helpful because they've got all the fiber in as well. So they're great for your digestive system. They feed the microbiome. And as long as your body is able to convert those essential fats, then you will get the brain benefits of them. The reason I'm cautious there is that some people genetically aren't as good as converting the plant versions of omega-3s as others. So you just have to be a little bit careful. And if you're not vegetarian, not vegan, then I would always say try to get some of your omega-3s from fish or seafood, or organic meat and dairy that has eggs, has a bit of omega-3 in as well.
So many things I want to ask you, and honestly, I've got down air fryers, intermittent fasting. Honestly, we're not even going to go anywhere near any of this stuff.
Oh, we're
Eating on a
running out of time as
budget.
well.
We're going to run out of time. I knew it would be like this. I knew this one because there's so, and that's kind of, it's brilliant and so interesting. But that's kind of the thing with it, isn't it? As well,
Yeah.
you have to keep.
There's so much.
That's so good though, because again, for me, you know, and this is where I do know all this. You go to what's easy, don't you? As a busy parent, you know, I get all this stuff ready. I'll tell you a couple of good ones I got, and I'd like to hear just very quickly what your thoughts are on this. One of my friends, who is a dietitian as well, said crack an egg in the porridge, and everyone goes, ugh. But actually, if you put it on a low heat, it doesn't scramble. And my youngest doesn't even know sometimes that I've put an egg in. And I don't do it all the time, but I'm definitely going to do it after this. And that's a really good way.
I've never heard of that. I've never even thought of that. But yeah, so some people will crack them into their smoothies. So instead of putting protein powder in, they'll put eggs in. They're raw. Some people might not like that, but you know, I think nowadays eggs are pretty they're safe. So yeah, I love eggs. Eggs are absolutely fabulous food. They're kind of like a perfect food just because of what they contain. And again,
the other one, Kerry, that I was told, and you know, again, we won't go down a rabbit hole, was peanut butter. And if it's a good quality peanut butter, but obviously you get bad peanut butters with loads of sugar in, I guess, as well. But you've got to be a bit careful. But that's got good source of protein, or not a good source of protein?
Yeah, it's definitely a source of protein. It's although it's a nut, it's not in the same family as walnuts, hazelnuts, cashews. It's a legume. So although it's called a peanut, it's not in that same category. So when people are talking about, or I'm talking about, you know, eat more nuts and seeds because they've got your omega-3s in, then peanut doesn't fall into that category. But you're right, it's a source of protein. I think again, it's just about looking at the labels and just making sure that you've gone for one of the higher quality, where you're just getting peanuts and a bit of oil. And a nice oil as well, not a kind of horrible oil. But
great. Thank you. And like I said, we did have a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we get through at least a couple of them. But thank you so much for sharing that side of things. So let's see what questions we potentially have coming up. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so audience question, here it comes. Okay, this is an interesting one from Suzanne in Dubai. Is oat milk bad for you? Well, I love oat milk in my coffee, and I felt like there was this big surge of cow's milk is not good for us anymore. Oat milk's good for us. And then there's all these oat milk barista. And now I really struggle actually not having oat milk in my coffee. So what do you think?
I think, first of all, I don't like to call a food good or bad, because there are good times when it might be absolutely fine, and other times when you might need to, you know, so if you're going to have a whole glass of oat milk with nothing else, then possibly the impact on you wouldn't be that good, because it will tip your blood sugar. So it's a source of carbohydrates. But if you're having that oat milk in a protein smoothie alongside a good amount of protein and fats and fiber and some frozen berries or something, then fine, that the carbohydrate is not going to have an impact on your blood sugar. I think it's the same with anything. You get good and bad versions. So, you know, there are some oat milks out there on the market that have got 20 different ingredients in them when you look on the back, versus others that are just oats, filtered water, and a bit of salt. So it's what is the type of oat milk that you're choosing, and what are the extra ingredients in there that you're having with it. But I don't, you know, oat milk on its own, I wouldn't call it a bad food, but you just want to be making sure that, again, you're not just having it on its own, and that you're having it with some protein and some fat to slow down the carbohydrate release.
And actually, cow's milk has protein in, right?
Yeah.
So actually, oat milk won't have the protein source that the cow's milk will have. Okay, that's interesting.
But
okay.
You know, for some people that can't tolerate dairy, and there's a huge percentage of people in the world that can't tolerate dairy. I can't tolerate dairy. Some of my problems I found, you know, I didn't like milk as a child, and I had all these digestive problems. And it was only much later that I realized that actually it was the milk that was causing the problems. So for those people, then oat milk would be a good substitute, because then the milk, dairy milk for them is not going to be great for them. But I would say when I'm working with my clients, I tend not to recommend oat milk. I tend to recommend nut milks or coconut milk, just because they've got more nutrients. They're just more nutritious than just oat milks. But on its own, I don't. It is, as a food, it's not a bad food. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. Okay, we've definitely got a few more questions. Here it comes. Any eating tips for when stress is high, i.e. during my child's exam season?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine you get asked this all the time, do you? Exam stress and eating. I mean, are you able to answer that?
So first of all, I think it's important for that all of us, that we all know this, and this is just from a pure eating, when to eat and when not to eat. When we're stressed, our body is in fight or flight, and when we're in fight or flight, our body is not able to digest food, because in an evolutionary setting, if we were running away from an animal, our body would not be trying to digest food. It would just be running away. So it's putting all its resources into muscles and getting it away from the animals. So stress and eating don't work. Your digestion just shuts down. So first of all, there's got to be some calming. There's got to be some calming activities that lead up to eating, so that the food can actually be your child can actually kind of process the food. So I think, again, magnesium, so bringing in things like magnesium. So magnesium is an anti-stress mineral. We call it kind of affectionately the anti-anxiety mineral. It's really important. Oh, there we go. So those foods there, I think of basically leafy green vegetables, which I know teenagers are not often keen on, but again, you can put them in a smoothie and whiz them up, and then you can't taste them. Nuts, seeds are great. Bit of dark chocolate, that's really high in magnesium, but don't eat the whole bar. You're just talking about like a few chunks of dark chocolate. That's a really good source of magnesium. Or Epsom salt baths. So that I use these a lot with clients. They're great for helping to wind down in the evening, especially helping you to sleep. Magnesium is brilliant for helping to reduce insomnia and for calming. But I don't know whether that's really answered the questions to what to do when they're stressed, but it's about calming stress. And
I think it is, because also often when you're in exam season, it comes back to, there's that link, you put sleep, and there's that link to sleep, isn't there? And you revising in the evening, because they'll be at school all day, and then they've got an exam the next day, and they'll revise all night, and sleep becomes really important as well, like you've already said. So if you're going to have high magnesium food, or maybe a magnesium supplement, is it better to take it quite soon before you go to bed? Does it matter when you have that?
It can be really helpful to have it in the evening as a kind of wind down. So actually, specifically, if you're thinking about that, sour cherries, or tart cherries, you can buy tart cherry juice. That is actually a form of contains a source of melatonin. So actually, a cherry juice smoothie with a bit of kale or a bit of cocoa powder, because that's got your magnesium in. That can be quite nice in the evening. Actually, the cocoa powder's got a bit of caffeine in as well, so that might not be so good. But in having that in the evening can be a really good wind down. And if you throw a few nuts in there as well, almonds, pistachio nuts particularly, are also helpful for melatonin. So again, that can be quite calming. The other things that you can do are herb teas. So herbal teas are amazing. We didn't really talk about hydration, but drinking enough water is absolutely critical for our brain to get all of those 36 nutrients flowing around the brain. If you haven't got enough blood flow, those nutrients can't get to where they need to go. So hydration is really key. And a lot of our teenagers are drinking energy drinks, caffeine drinks, and not drinking enough water. And water is becoming very, very unappealing. But adding in herbs, so if you've got a little garden outside, you've got a little windowsill where you can grow some herbs, rosemary is really helpful for calming. It helps to bolster GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that makes us calm. And lemon balm is another one. That one really helps to make you calm. So you've got a child that's really stressed in exam season, just bringing them, if they'll try it and they're happy to, just bringing them a steady supply of rosemary tea, lemon balm tea, chamomile tea in the evening, can again just take the edge off that nervous anxiety and stress. But protein as well, just to keep those neurotransmitters, the serotonin, fully supported.
That's great. I think we've probably got time for one more question. Do organic foods make a difference to the regulation of our hormonal system? We touched on Sarah in London. Thank you, Sarah. We touched on organic eggs, didn't we? Being slightly higher in the omega-3. Is it so? Again, do you buy into the organic label? It's a big label, isn't it? It's on a lot of foods, and obviously that comes with a price tag as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I do. So it's unfortunate, very unfortunate, that organic food now is more expensive than processed food and non-organic food, and it should absolutely be the other way around, but it isn't. So I think it's when you're the reasons being, so it's quite complicated in terms of the hormone regulation, but we need for hormone regulation, we need a liver that's working really well. And we don't want it to be overloaded. So you put food in that's got pesticides in, those are toxins. The liver has got to process them. And the digestive system needs to work really well to have balanced hormones. I won't go into all the science, but the microbiome impacts hormone levels. If you've got an imbalanced microbiome, you can end up with estrogen dominance. And many women, many teenage girls nowadays are struggling with estrogen dominance symptoms. So the microbiome can be one of the contributors to that. So pesticides impact the microbiome. Glyphosate, so Roundup, impacts the digestive system. You've also then got antibiotics that are in non-organic animal produce, hormones that are in non-organic animal produce. The antibiotics are wiping out the microbiome, they're killing our own microbiome, and the hormones are exacerbating hormonal imbalances in our own bodies. So there's a lot going on with organic food versus non-organic food. But from a budget point of view, there's not many of us that could afford to eat fully organic. So I think the priorities is dairy would be the first one that I would say switch to organic dairy. And then if you can, organic meat. So organic meat contains the omega-3s that non-organic meat generally doesn't because of the way it's been reared, and grass-fed meats are better. So free-range grass-fed meats are better than grain-fed non-grass-reared animals. That all helps to regulate your hormones. So it's a little bit complicated with hormones, but yeah, the answer is organic is better, definitely.
If you can, and it's good, and a good place to start with dairy. Look, thank you so much, Kerry. We honestly, again, we could go on for we could go on for hours, but we've got to go to bed. That was so interesting and insightful. I definitely feel like we need to do another 1 or 2 or 5 because there's so many things on my list I want to talk to you about as well. But that was brilliant. Do you want to just tell us where we can find you, your website? I think it's your brand new website as well.
It is a brand new website. It launched this week, so I'm very excited about that. But yeah, there's more information on there. So I do one-on-one nutritional therapy sessions where we can look at finding out what's going on, why you're feeling the way you're feeling. I can do functional testing, individual supplement protocols, so just to help you feel better. Nutritional coaching is great with teenagers. So if we're not looking for anything specifically wrong with them, we just want to tweak their diet and help get them to learn a little bit about how they're feeling and what they're eating and make the link. Then nutritional coaching is really helpful. And I'm hoping to do, I'm currently only doing one-on-ones, but I'm hoping to launch some group programs in the near future, just to bring this to more people, make it more affordable and more accessible. And if there are any teachers or schools watching, then I'd love to talk to you as well. I think trying to get this information into the education system and just weaving it into school life would be, I would absolutely love to see that happening more. So just get in touch. My Calendly availability is on the website, so you can just book in or email me.
Brilliant, Kerry. Thank you so much. And I'm totally with you. We've got to get this into school. So
Yeah.
go to Kerry's website. Kerry is also on our website. So she's going to be one of our youHQ live speakers in the future. And we want to do lots more work with you because, absolutely what we've already said, let's educate everyone, not just, I was educated in that hour. And like I said, I've done a degree in some of this stuff and I still got so much to learn. Really, really interesting. Kerry, thank you again for your time. And we look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you very much for having me. I've loved it. Great.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.